How's it going, everyone? My name is Michael SK, and welcome back to Umineko When They Cry, Episode 4. The test is on, whatever that means, but Kinzo is testing the children here, that being Battler, George, Jessica, and Maria, to see if any of them are worthy of being the successor for the Ushiromiya family, and then they can save the lives of those that have not been killed yet. Which is everybody currently imprisoned below the secret mansion, wherever that is. And yeah, who's to say what this test entails? And I just want to remind you all, I really don't think that the man posing as Kinzo really is Kinzo. He's just acting way too different and coming in with all these powers that didn't ever seem evident in any of the previous episodes. For him to come out of the study and this is what we get, just really rubs me the wrong way. Something is very amiss. Who knows what we'll find out here. But also in the previous video, we saw one last glimpse of Ange before she got ready to come here to the island, Rokkenjima. Something caught her eye. She saw something that the others could not see. So I really wonder what was seen there. People in the comments were saying that, what she saw was actually in frame, but the background was so zoomed in that you actually couldn't see it. So at some point, that will unzoom, I'm assuming. Oh, and by the way, I'm always just making adjustments, it seems, whenever I'm recording, but I have done a hardware change with my computer. I've decided to jump ship from old NVIDIA to the new AMD card that came out just the other day, actually. And it's a wonderful card. But while I have recorded with AMD before, I have no idea if there's going to be any issues with AMD and the Umineko project of which I'm recording here. So if there's any, visual glitches or any bugs or whatever, let's just chalk it up to that. The fact that they were being watched certainly seemed to be true. Because when they returned to the cousin's room, turned the lights on, and lay down on their beds, the phone rang again. Earlier, Jessica had been answering the phone, seeing as this was her house, but now it was the eldest, George, who picked it up. This time, Kirie-san was on the other end of the line. George handed it to Battler out of consideration.
もしもし、キリエさんか。そっちは大丈夫なのか。
心配をありがとう。今のところは快適よ。ごめんなさい。死後は慎めと命令されてる。今から伝えることをよく聞いて。
The fact that they were hostages still had not changed. Kinzo, or one of his subordinates, was listening to the conversation. Battler restrained the urge to talk about other things and focused on what Kirie had to say.
テストはジェシカちゃん、ジョージ君、バトラ君、そしてマリアちゃんの順で行われるそうよ。順番に呼び出すから、それまでその部屋を出ないこと。
Oh, wow. So Maria's gonna be last, and Battler is second to last.
呼び出された者は、一人で指定された場所に向かうこと。
Battler repeated it out loud so that the cousins listening in around him could hear.
ジェシカ、兄貴、俺、マリアの順で、呼び出しがあるまで部屋にいろ。わかった。マリアもなのかよ。9歳の子にまで。クソジジイは何を強いる気なんだ。
後ろ宮家の命運は、あなたたちに握られてるわ。頑張って。
ああ。
Battler noticed the strange nuance in Kirie's words. Even without any blood connection, he could still understand thanks to the long-lasting bond that they shared. At this point, it doesn't make sense to worry about the Ushiromiya family itself, and that probably wasn't the message that Kirie wanted to send. She probably meant that there's no way for us to escape from this dungeon, and we can only wait to be rescued. Our lives are in your hands. Something like that. Oh yeah, what we wrapped up in the previous episode was that they actually had to lock away Kumasawa, there we go, and oh shoot, what's his name? Goda, yeah, we had to lock those two up.
どんなテストか知らねえが上等だぜ。受けて立ってやら。本気のテストなんだよな。マジにやっちまって。いいんだよな。
ええ、本気のテストよ。おじい様も本気で試すつもりでいるわ。
ダメだな。全然ダメだぜ。死にかけの老いぼれが俺と本気？寝言は棺に入ってから言いやがれ。そこにいるジジイに言っとけ。次期当主は俺だ。その最初の仕事はてめえの面に鉄拳ぶち込んでやることだってな。
What a nice declaration. Even without Kirie having to repeat it, Battler's powerful declaration of war reached Kinzo's ears.
バトラー、それは実に楽しみであるぞ。一度は後ろ宮の名を捨てた男が何を身につけ、何の境地に至って我が前に現れるというのか、そう伝えよ。
Unfortunately, Kinzo's voice was not picked up by the receiver, and therefore Kirie spoke for him. Yeah, say it in the same way, though.
上等だそうよ。いい？バトラ君。手加減は不要よ。あなたはルドルフさんの息子。いいえ、私の息子よ。誰に自慢しても恥ずかしくないところを私にも見せてちょうだい。あなたに全てを託すわ。
了解だぜ、母ちゃん。あとは任せておけ。私たち全員は当主跡継ぎの資格を失っている。もう私たちは取られてゲーム版から外された駒も同然よ。だからあなたたちだけで戦って。キリエさん。
The nuance of those words was, we've already given up, so forget about us. But for that very reason, I won't give up. I'll definitely crush this test or whatever and save everyone.
それでは、一番最初のジェシカちゃんへのテストの指示よ。自分の部屋へ行け。で、
自分の部屋？
お屋敷のジェシカちゃんの自室って意味のよね。
ジェシカに代わる。直接伝えてやってくれ、ジェシカ。もしもし。はい。わかりました。
Well, Jessica, you're up. Good luck.
私からか。もう覚悟決めたぜ。行ってくるぜ。
Yeah, she's not going to be passing this test. Even Jessica was probably tempted to succumb to the fear of a girl her age, but she crushed those feelings and strengthened her resolve.
用心してね。
私たちは監視されてんだろ。余計なこともできない。言いなりになるしかないさ。
食堂でジジイは何のためらいもなく瞬く間に6人を殺したという。それは俺たちに対しても同じかもな。
分かってる。返り討ちにしてやるぜ。
無茶はダメだよ。危険だと思ったら自分を最優先にして、クラウスおじさんが自分のために娘が犠牲になったことを知ったら胸が張り裂けてしまうに違いないから。
逆も同じだぜ。父さんと母さんが殺されて私だけが生き残ったら私の胸だって張り裂けるぜ。
バトラ君、さっきの話は本当だよね。
ああ、キリエさんたちはもう覚悟を決めている。
ならなおのこと上等だぜ。みんなの命は私たちの双剣にかかってるってことだ。人質みんなは囚われの身で何もできない。なら私たちが何とかするしかねえんだぜ。
もし何かあったらゲストハウスに逃げ戻って、その時点で僕たちがおじい様のゲームに付き合うのは終了だ。
兄貴。
その時点で僕たちは宣戦布告。どこかに閉じ込められている彼らを救い出し、おじい様には叱るべき処遇を与える。
I really don't think it's going to be that easy.
いいのか兄貴。シャノンちゃんもいるんだろ。
だからといって僕は座して婚約者が殺されるのを待ちはしないよ。
My man.
僕が恐ろしいのはおじい様にシャノンが殺されるかもしれないことに僕の婚約者に恐怖を味わわせたクソじじいよ。君らが僕より先にぶん殴っちまうことだけさ。
Man, I don't think we've ever seen him give this sort of look before.
なるほどな。確かにこいつは次期当主が誰かを決めるってテストらしいぜ。
だな。クソジジイの顔面に一番最初に拳をお見舞いしたやつが 次の投資だぜ。
George, Battler, and Jessica each forcefully nodded their heads and put their fists together. What about Maria? Then Jessica headed off to her own room as designated. Her form disappeared into the darkness of the rose garden, waving in the strong winds. Watching her go, George and Battler gripped their fists even tighter, making them quiver. I wonder how this is all gonna go down. Left on the second floor, Maria watched Jessica's back through the window. She wore a blank expression.
みんなは何を生きまいてるのかな。ベアトリーチェが蘇れば、みんな生き返らせてもらえるのにね。
Jessica's form was already being completely swallowed up by the darkness. At that time, the phone began to ring again. Battler and George heard it and came clamoring back, but Maria picked up the receiver right away.
もしもし。
マリア様ですか？シャノンです。ジョージ様に代わっていただけますか？
This time it was Shannon on the phone. And this time, the message was to tell the next person, George, where he was to go. So they are going to be happening concurrently. And we're already done with another chapter. And it's still the first day. We have not gotten to the second one. The next head, huh? Well, I don't know if one will be selected. And if one does get selected, I don't think it's going to be happening that quickly. But honestly, I'll predict it here. It's either going to be Battler or Maria, if anyone at all. I really can't see it being Jessica or George. Now, we might be seeing some new stuff come out of both Jessica and George. You know, a different side of them that we've never seen before. I don't know. Of course, since the time of her birth, Jessica had been raised in this mansion. The atrophied Western-style house that the cousins called a mansion was her home. And yet, she had never understood her cousin's feelings as much as she did today. At the same time, she had never felt her own home, which she knew well to be as alien as it seemed now. Her own room. This had once been her hideaway, the only place in this vast mansion where she could feel at peace. However, she had never felt as much pressure coming from that door as she did now.
テストだって。一体何が待ち受けてやがるんだ。まさか私の机とか引っかき回してねえだろうな。
I hope not. I hate it when people move my stuff around, like either here or work or whatever. If anything's out of place, it's just awful. She acted tough, trying to deceive herself, trying to make herself believe that she wasn't scared or anything, or scared of anything. Readying herself, she opened the door to her room. Well, here we go. Come on. Anytime now. Well, this looks normal, I think. The lights still work. When she saw that, fortunately the room didn't appear to be messed up, she relaxed. No one was there. Of course. There was nowhere for anyone to hide here. Right away, Jessica locked the door behind her. And this way, the room was safe. Yeah, maybe. She peeked under the bed and in the closet, but of course, no one was hiding.
なんだってんだ。
She looked at the clock. It was just past 11:10 p.m. And as her attention lessened and fatigue came back to her entire body, she realized how messed up this whole day had been. It was about 11 p.m. The plan had been for all the cousins to gather, have fun playing around, and talk animatedly about various things together into the night. Normally, we would have been doing that kind of thing right now. Why has that turned into this?
全部あのクソジジイのせいだ。よくも母さんをみんなを。
She shook her head back and forth with anger and sadness. But there was no one here to direct those emotions at. Because of the lock, this room's security was guaranteed. Remembering that one more time, Jessica somehow regained her calm. If it keeps up like this and nothing happens, I want to go to the dining hall and see Mom's dead face. That's not a good idea. Even though Goda emphasized so strongly that it was gruesome and that I definitely shouldn't go look at it, Well, even so, I wanted to see her face at the end. But we were warned repeatedly that stepping out of line even a little would put the hostages in danger. Could it be that locking the door was also against the rules? If I close myself up in here, I alone might be saved. Nah, no way. But if I don't open it, it'll surely be against the rules. And Dad, Kanun-kun, Shannon, Aunt Kirie, and Dr. Najo will be killed. There's no way the scales will balance out between 5 lives and my own one life. Jessica tightly shut her eyes, resisting the other part of herself that said, "Isn't it okay as long as I stay alive?" Faced the door and made to unlock it. At that time, oh shit, somebody's clapping. A crisp applause rang out, making Jessica's heart leap. Oh.
鍵をかけたままならルール違反ということになり、人質たちにも危害が及ぶかもしれません。しかしそれでも自分の命だけは。しかしあなたはその誘惑に耐え、自ら鍵を開けようとした。そのあなたの勇気は称賛に値しますよ。
誰？
I, the owner of this room, searched everywhere a human could have been hiding. Where did this man come from? There was nowhere for a human to hide. But could something non-human have managed it? This was supposedly my first meeting with this largely built, middle-aged man. I didn't recognize this guy who looked like a butler and bore the crest of the one-winged eagle.
はじめまして、ジェシカ様。私は親方様より家具頭を任されております。72柱の27位、ロの上と申します。
ロの上、源氏さん。
ああ、源氏は私の弟のような存在。あるいはこの世界における私の正しい姿だったのかもしれません。
Interesting.
より白だったと言っても良いでしょうな。
何を言ってんだこいつ。
おっと、これは失礼しました。人間には話しても理解できぬ話。それでは本題に移りましょう。
クソジジイの言うテストとかいうやつだな。
さようでございます。こちらが親方様がジェシカ様に賜れました。
Yeah, what does one of these tests entail, you know? At Renove's elegant gesture, like that of a butler ordering for a meal to be set out, many gold butterflies flew up out of nowhere. You'll get used to it. It happens very frequently throughout the story. As the cloud of gold butterflies spun around in a small swirl, they gathered in one place. Then the golden mound disappeared like a pile of leaves blown away by a cold wintry wind, and there lay a western envelope with the one-winged eagle crest done on it in gold leaf. With a gesture, Renove urged her to pick it up. Jessica timidly did so and opened the letter inside. What do we got?
非常にシンプルな次期当主の資格を探るテストでございます。そこに記されている問いに、どうか後ろ宮家を担う次期当主としての心構えで臨んでいただき、答えとそれに至ったお考えをお聞かせください。
Shaking, Jessica looked between the paper and Renove's face several times. Well, what does it say? Okay, now we're following George. I guess everybody is going to their stationed areas here. At that time, George, who had been called out after Jessica, could be seen in the arbor of the Rose Garden. If things had gone normally, he had planned to give Shannon the ring that would be proof of their engagement here at this time on this day. So that didn't actually happen, which, you know, makes sense with the very different course of events this time around. But the woman in front of George now was not Shannon. Oh. it's potentially an even better looking woman.
それがゴールドスミスからあなた
Maybe
に
a
与え
better
られ
woman
るテスト
overall.
よ。
Who's to say? George picked up the Western envelope, which was on the table where he had had tea with Shannon, and read its contents. Perhaps its message was short. After glancing at it, George's eyes grew sharp.
なんだいこれは。
見ての通りよ。それがあなたに与えられる次期当主の資格を探るテスト。次期当主としての資格を自らに問いながら、その問いに答えなさい。
なんてバカな問題だ。
そうね、本当にバカな問題ね。ならゴールドスミスにとっての後ろ宮家の家督なんてその程度のものなんじゃない？
George lowered his eyes to the surface of the letter once again, examining its contents. George and Jessica, while the tests given to them were slightly different, they were almost exactly the same.
以下に掲げる3つのうち2つを得るために1つを生贄に捧げよ
う。Okay.
簡単な3択じゃない。どれを見殺しに選ぶか自ら決めなさい。選択を拒めばテストは中断。私の手であなたをこの場で殺してしまってもいいって許可をもらってるわ。
Wow.
それさえも選択肢に含めるなら4択ね。私君みたいなこと遊ぶのは随分久しぶりだからそれも嫌いじゃないわよ。
Well, that's a
こ
little
の選
sus.
択はあくまでもテストなのか、それとも選択は結果を伴うのか。
何を甘えてるの？君が選択したものは必ず命を落とす。
So we're choosing people here. Among the 3 mentioned below, in order to gain 2, sacrifice 1. 1. Your life. 2. Shannon's life. 3. Everyone else's life. Or lives, excuse me. Okay, so I'm assuming that with Jessica's, replace number 2 with Kanon. If you do not choose 1, all of the above will be lost.
どうしてシャノンの名がここにあるんだ。
2番目の選択肢にはそのものが最も必要とするジェシカへのテストの2番にはカノンって書かれているはずだわ。
このバカな問題をジェシカにも出したのかい。
Could this also go back to the old reliable without love there cannot be whatever?
ジェシカのことなんかどうでもいいでしょ。今試されているのは実に簡単な3択だわ。他の2つのためにどれを捨てられるかということよ。簡単でしょ。それでも決まらないならコインでも貸してあげようかしら。
コイン2面しかないものでどうやって3択を。
自分の命を捨てられるものが一となればおのずと残る選択肢は2つになる。愛する者のために全ての人間を諦めるか、一人でも多くを救うために愛する者一人を諦めるか。どっちにももっともらしい大義名分がつけられるわ。だって今やこのロッケン島は悪魔の島ですもの。人間の世界の甘ったるい馴れ合いなんて必要ないの。誰も責めないわ。あなたの心の赴くままに後ろ宮家の家督を継ぐにふさわしい資格が自らにあるかを問いながら、いいえ、自らが後ろ宮家当主であると思って選択なさい。
This is pretty tough, I will admit. I personally don't know what the proper answer would be. Because, as George brought up, it could be taken hypothetically. Or, this is actually what's going to happen. But based on how Gap had actually said it, you know, it does seem to lean more on the hypothetical side. Do you want to sacrifice yourself for everyone else to live? Sacrifice the one you love for you and everybody else to live? Or sacrifice everybody else so that you and the love of your life can live? It's kind of a tricky one, isn't it? And if you refuse to answer, then you actually will die. And according to Renove, you have to explain your reasoning. Jessica crumpled the letter up and threw it on the floor.
お怒りはごもっともと思いますよ。私も非常にお気の毒で、それでいて実に滑稽な出題だと思います。
自分から死にたいと願う人間なんているもんか。そして愛する人の命を見捨てて生き残りたいと思う人間なんているもんか。そして自分たちだけ良ければ他の人間全てを見殺しにできる人間なんて。
いいえ、ジェシカ様、いても良いのでございます。ここはロッケン島、悪魔の島。今や人間の世界から完全に切り取られ、魔界にどっぷりチーズフォイルのように沈んでおります。人の世の価値観など次の燃えないゴミの日に出してしまいますとも。ですからどうジェシカ様が心より欲するものを順にお選びください。その結果、残ったものがこの狂った今宵にふさわしきジェシカ様の回答となりましょう。
ふざけるな。こんなのどれも選べるものかよ。
いずれも選ばねば上記の全てを失うも立派な第四の選択肢でございます。それを選ばれるのもまた一興でございましょう。ただそれを選び結局自らの命を落とされるなら、潔く一番の自分の命を選び他の二つを救われた方が賢明かと思いますよ。全てはジェシカ様の選択に委ねられます。どうぞ後ろ宮家の跡継ぎにふさわしい回答とその信念をお聞かせくださいませ。この炉の上、親方様の血を引きし末裔にふさわしき素晴らしい回答を心より期待いたしております。
I wonder if the test, how this is actually going to work out, is maybe more so in a way of like you're doing process of elimination, right? So let's say Jessica or George, they sacrifice themselves or they sacrifice a loved one. Okay, so that's people that are getting, crossed off. What if one of them, eliminates themselves? They sacrifice themselves. So that eliminates them from, the possible drawing here. And then Battler and Maria, they partake, and it's really whoever's left in all of this, Maybe it could go down that direction? It's hard to say. What is Kinzo cooking up here? That scene was observed through the magic crystal ball that Kinzo held. Kinzo finally couldn't hold it back, and spreading his arms and facing the heavens, began laughing in an explosive voice.
何を迷うか、愚かなる孫たちよ、我が末裔たちよ。即答できる簡単な問題ではないか。朝のトーストにバターを塗るかジャムを塗るかより迷わぬ選択であるというのに。お前たちには正しい答えがわかるか？
He turned to face the Chester sisters who had been waiting on him.
申し訳ございません。私にはわかりません。ゴールドスミス
教。愚か者め、選べもせぬとはな。自らの生きる理由も目的も見出せん愚かなウサギめ。
No, you have to make a decision or else everybody dies. So uncertainty does mean death. You have to know that one, selection has to be made for death.
貴様など誰にも気づかれずに踏み潰されて生を終えるアリ一匹ほどの価値もないわ。死ね、潰れろ。私が瞬きしている間に消えてなくなれ。お前はどうか。
私は一番の自分の命を生贄とするであります。武具は戦い、知ってこそであります。そして武具は 敵を撃ち滅ぼし味方を守るためにある。愛する者たちを守って死ねるなら本望であります。
ほう、ブヌらしい実に見事な模範解答よ。即答、大いに結構。
Yeah, for real, there was no hesitation there.
そう答えれば人参が一本余計にもらえると教えられてきたのか。違うよな。それすらも違うよな。そう聞かれたらそう答えようと、お前はただ吹き込まれた通りに答えたに過ぎない。お前も今のウサギと同じだ。自分の生きる理由と目的を未だに見出せずに生きている。生きる価値なきクズめ。貴様など潰されて他の家畜の餌にでもなるのがお似合いよ。
はっ、家畜の餌光栄であります。
違うだろう。もう誰も死ぬところを見たくないんだろう。それがなぜ認められぬのか。認めろよ。お前の古傷の奥の奥が未だに産んで腐っていることを。不臭にて鼻が曲がりそうであるわ。愚かなる腐れウサギめ。お前にはこれが褒め言葉である。
ありがとうございます。であります。
さて、最後のお前はどうか。この三択から何を選ぶ？
Yeah, what will she say here?
にひ迷うことなく当然に。
おお、2番か。愛する者を生贄に捧げることを胸を張って選べる者は多くない。訳を聞かせよ。
愛する者はいつかいなくなるからです。愛する者がいなければ傷つかないし、いなくてもいつかまた誰かを愛せるかもしれない。
But love is needed, right?
だから
That's an important plot point.
今愛してるものなんて大した価値はないのですにひ。
なるほど。それでそういう回答になるわけか。愛に傷ついたがゆえに臆病になったウサギよ。ウサギは寂しさで死ぬと聞いたが、お前の心は一体いつ殺されたというのか。ならばウサギよ、2番の選択肢を愛するものではなく、そなたが愛したものの思い出に変えようではないか。どうかこれでももう一度選べるか。何が愛してるものに大した価値はないだ、愚かなウサギよ。自らの愛の深さにも向かい合えぬクズめ。選んでみよ。愛したものを忘れられると選んでみや。選べるだろう。選べるものな。ほら、選べるって言ってみろよ。
選べるであります。
Yeah, I doubt it.
選べるであります。
ゴールドスミス卿、それくらいでどうかお許しを。
もうよいわ、クズウサギどもめ。お前たちはワルギリアのところへ行き、地下牢の見張りを手伝うのだ。消えよ。
The Chester sisters, with their respective old wounds of the heart gouged out, escape by disappearing. After that, even though there was no one to hear, Kinzo continued talking by himself as though in a play.
と、このように愉快なテストなわけだ。実のところを言えば、これが正解という選択肢はない。
Is it more so maybe the reasoning has to be correct?
むしろどの答えであろうともよどみなく素早く、そして確固たる信念と揺るがぬ強き自らの意志で選べるかどうか、その理由と意志の方が重要なのだ。
Okay, so Jessica and George have both already failed then.
私はそれを知りたいのだよ。 ああ、我が末裔たちよ。お前たちはどのような答えを見せてくれるのか、実に楽しみだ。私かああ、もちろん同じ問いを突きつけられたことがあったとも。その悪魔の問いに見事答えたからこそ、私は黄金と名誉とあの魔女を我が物とすることができたのだよ。私が選んだ答えはどれか。
It was the third one, right?
言うまでもないよな。
What a laugh. But that's not Kinzo's laugh. Come on. We're not falling for that. Okay, so what will happen next here? What will they choose?
そろそろ答えは決まりましたでしょうか？
As Jessica stared at the letter that had been crushed and lay on the floor, she hung her head in constant silence. All that filled the room was the stir from wind and rain shaking the treetops. Regardless of how noisy that was, it actually made the stillness more apparent. Renove waited for Jessica's answer. However, Jessica didn't answer. Whether she was lost in deep thought or had stopped thinking, Renove couldn't tell. No, he might have actually already known. But cruelly, like a demon, Renove urged Jessica to voice it.
どれも選べないというなら、そのお命、せめて痛みがないよう安らかに頂戴させていただきますが。
せよ。
はい、聞こえかねました。もう一度お願いできますかな。
Jessica lifted her face and looked straight into Renove's eyes. It seemed that she had decided on her answer. She would sacrifice herself.
殺せよ。
Jessica said it one more time, clearly. Perhaps Renove had imagined that this would be her answer from the very beginning. Without any surprise, he smiled lightly and nodded.
ジェシカ様なら、そのお答えを選ぶと思っておりました。さて、このテストは、どの選択肢が正解、不正解というものではありません。重要なのは、どのような考えを経て、その答えに至ったか。さあ、ジェシカ様の、そして次期当主としての心構えを持って、それをお答えください。
別に、死にたくて1番目を選んだわけじゃないさ。2番の、カノン君を死なせること。こんなの。もちろん論外。だから除外。3番の、その他みんなの命。こんなのも、もちろん論外。だから除外。そしたら、1番目の選択肢しか残らなかった。
消去法。
Yeah, I was just about to say. All reliable process of elimination. After chuckling slightly, Renove dropped his gaze. A human couldn't even imagine what answer a demon would have been expecting. All she could understand was that this was apparently slightly below Renove's expectations.
悪くはありませんが、60点というところでしょうか。少し失望しましたよ。
自信を持って選べみたいなこと言っておいて、そうしてやったら失望とは自分勝手な野郎だぜ。
消去法というだけではないようですね。いずれにせよ落第点ですが、もう少しお考えがあるようだ。伺いましょう。
死にたくないさ。だから一番なんて誰だって選びたくない。人は幸せに生きたくて生の限りをあがいてるんだぜ。だから本当はまず1番目なんてありえないはずなんだ。
しかしあなたは1番目の選択肢、自分の命を捨てることを選んだ。その選択肢しか残らなかった。
一応それぞれの選択肢を選んだ後の未来のことを考えてみたぜ。
ほう、いかがでしたか？
まずカノン君を死なせてみた。私は自分の大好きな人を見捨ててまで生きる残りの生涯を想像してみた。
それはどんな生涯でしたか？
生きるにも値しない最低の女だった。いつまでも自らの選択を悔やみ、ただ後悔だけのために生きる、大好きな人を見捨てて生きることを選んだ最低の女なんて私には許せない。私が自ら引導を渡してやる。
勇ましい。では3番目の選択肢も考えられたのでは？
あ、私とカノン君以外の全員を死なせても見た。カノン君はそんな私を好きになるはずはない。そして私もまた、いくらカノン君がいてもそのために見捨てた大勢の命が、そしてその十字架はカノン君にまでのしかかった。私はカノン君に十字架を背負わせるために愚かな選択肢を選んだりはしない。もしそんなことをする私がいたなら、私はその未来の私を許さない。その女にも私が引導を渡してやる。
You know, this kind of reminds me of episode 3 with Ava. She wasn't necessarily given a choice, but it did appear like she wanted to live her life as the successor, having found the gold with her family. However, that means that she chose to sacrifice everybody else. And that, in turn, roped even Hideyoshi and George into it. So it was just herself that remained. So was that the right choice? She lived a pretty sad life, you know, and she died alone. It probably wasn't the right choice. Jessica had pictured it in her mind. The future her, but beyond each of the three choices. There were 3 Jessicas. Of the 3, 2 had regrets. Only one could hold her head high and smile at Kanon.
私さ、生意気にもカノン君に説教したことがあるぜ。自分の人生を思い切り生きてみろみたいなこと。
自分の人生を思い切り生きる。味わいある言葉ですね。それは意外にとても難しいものです。
だからさ、私が胸を張ってカノン君に見せなきゃならないんだよ。胸を張ってお天道様を真正面から見て、思い切り笑顔でいられる生き方ってやつを。
あなたの自己犠牲をカノンは受け入れられるでしょうか。あなたの身勝手な選択が余計に彼を傷つけてしまうことには思いが至りませんか。
And you know, it's not just him. It's also going to be her father.
だから伝言を頼みたい。
ほう、お聞きはしますが、何しろ私は悪魔です。約束は守らないかもしれませんよ。
守って、約束。
Jessica spoke that looking quite unconcerned. She had asked the demon, who was about to take her leave, to pass on a message, and she didn't think at all that she would be betrayed. At that extremely innocent smile, Renove closed his eyes lightly and shrugged his shoulders.
いいでしょう。それで、彼に何と伝えればよろしいですか？
Are we going back to George?
カノン君の
Oh no.
思い切りの人生を。
They're listening in.
ちょっと違う。カノン君のじゃない。本当の名前は未だに教えてもらえないけど、本当のカノン君の人生をそう伝えて。
お嬢様。
ジェシカ、お前というやつは。
炉の上は気まぐれですから、伝言をしなかった可能性もありました。幸運でしたね。私がこの光景を見せていて。
A musty 3-sided mirror was set beyond the bars, and the scene with Jessica was reflected on it. On the next mirror, the scene with George was reflected in the same way. None of them questioned how a 3-sided mirror had appeared from a group of butterflies, nor did they wonder why these scenes with Jessica and George were reflected on it. Because the reflected scenes themselves were more important.
そこまでこいつのために命をも投げ出せるというのか。
申し訳ありません。
Kraus looked at Kanon with a complicated expression mixed in with a bitter smile. Kanon wouldn't meet his eyes.
ワルギリア様、お嬢様が命を落とされることはありません。僕を殺してください。2番目の選択肢に変えてください。それで全ては丸く収まるはずです。
It's not your choice to make though.
その願いを私に叶えることはできませんよ。これはジェシカの選んだ自らの選択なの。
Oh, there they are. Probably not all that happy after what just happened. At that time, suddenly the air split and the Chester sisters appeared flying into Virgilia's chest. Virgilia, who still didn't have a clue of what was going on, was mobbed by the sobbing Chester sisters.
はいはい、大丈夫ですよ、大丈夫ですよ。美味しいお紅茶を入れてあげますからね。お前たち、ここの見張りを任せます。不審な真似をしたらすぐに知らせるのですよ。
The goat attendants all faced each other, nodding their heads. Virgilia took the Chester sisters and left. The sound of them going upstairs could be heard, so they had probably gone to an upper floor. Now we got these guys here.
このヤギ頭どもは頭が悪いみたい。うまく騙せないかしら。
Kirie realized that an opportunity had arrived, but even so, she hadn't thought of a way to break the metal bars. The Jessica reflected on the three-sided mirror had her eyes closed, as though in contemplation. The way she had both hands stuck into her pockets, wanting to be defiant until the very end, might have been her own aesthetic stance.
私の言い分は以上だ。殺せよ。
わかりました。それでは。ご安心を。あなたへの死は、どんな眠りよりも優しく、慈悲深いものにいたしますよ。
Well, this confirms that this is not a hypothetical. As Renove raised his palm, he slowly approached Jessica. Realizing that his daughter was about to be killed, Kraus went half mad and repeatedly body slammed the metal bars. The goats looked like they were sneering at how a mere human didn't stand a chance at breaking those bars. Kraus's pointless efforts certainly may have been comical, but Kraus was giving it everything he had. He was now living with all he had as Jessica's father, so that he could save her. Kanon made tight fists with both hands. If he used his cursed power, he might be able to cut through even metal bars. But there were full 3 goats. There was no way that he could defeat 3 of them in an instant. It would instantly be reported, and then even Virgilia and the Chester sisters would probably dash in. Even if he could break the bars, that would be the end of it. It was useless. Kanon already knew that the witch sneered at useless efforts like that, so he could do nothing but stare at Kraus's repeated body slams. Shannon, who had been looking at the three-sided mirror, raised her voice. When they looked, they could see George, who had been silent the whole time, lift his face. All right, let's hear his answer. It seemed that George had also decided on an answer. Is he going to say something similar? Maybe?
決まった?君の答え。
ああ、決まったよ。
それは揺るぎない答え。
ああ、揺るぎないね。
なら、聞かせてもらうわ。ああ、ちなみに、ジェシカはどうも、自分の命を差し出すことを選んだようよ。まさか、優柔不断な君も、同じ答えを選んだって言うんじゃないでしょうね。
ジェシカは、ジェシカの答えを出したのさ。それがどの選択であろうとも。それはジェシカの答えだ。僕の答えに何も干渉しないよ。
そう。なら改めて聞くわ。以下に掲げる3つのうち、2つを得るために1つを生贄に捧げる。1、自分の命。2、 シャノンの命3、それ以外の全員の命。あなたが選んだのはどれ？まさかジェシカと同じ1番？
You know, it would be absolutely batshit crazy if he actually chose number 2. I think he's going to be choosing... He's not choosing himself. But he's not going to choose number 2 either. Is he going to sacrifice everyone? Gap looked a little surprised, because she had thought this timid-looking man would obviously choose that option.
ならよかったわ。私にとって一番退屈な選択肢が外れてくれてよかった。じゃあ、まさかとは思う。
There's no way.
2番？
There's no way.
シャノンの命を見捨ててみせる？
まさか。今夜まさに婚約指輪を贈ろうという相手をどうして僕が？
So he's willing to sacrifice everyone else.
これは大胆だわ。それが君の答えなの。
そうさ。僕の答えは3番さ。
Wow. George took the third option. Everyone else's lives. Unsurprisingly, Gap hadn't imagined that he'd give an answer like that. She had been sure that he would choose the same one as Jessica. So she was interested in how he had reached that answer. How he had reached an answer that had surpassed the imagination of the 33rd ranked of the 72 demons.
聞かせてほしいわ。自分と愛する婚約者だけが無事で、それ以外の全てを犠牲にできる境地というのを聞かせてほしいわ。あなたもジェシカと同じで消去法というやつ？
違うね。はっきりこれしか僕には選択肢がないのさ。
自分さえ良ければいいと？愛する女と引き換えに世界を犠牲にできると？
君は何を言っているんだい？
何？
George faced the demon as he spoke, almost as though he was disgusted.
僕は今夜ここにシャノンを呼び出し、婚約の証である指輪を渡すつもりだった。僕とシャノンの婚約を祝福しない者もきっと多いだろう。僕は彼女との婚約を宣言することで親族すべてを敵に回すと僕にはあるんだよ。この島に訪れたその時から。いや違う、彼女に婚約したいと打ち明けたその時からね。
結婚さえできれば他の何もかも犠牲にできると？
結婚とは自分は生涯妻の味方であり続けるということだ。僕にはその時点で彼女のために世界の全てを敵に回す覚悟があるんだ。
Those words through the three-sided mirror also reached Shanon's ears, and that determination reached her eyes. Shannon certainly had promised to be given an engagement ring tonight. Then this incident had occurred, and she hadn't been able to receive the ring. But now, even though it wasn't in the form of a ring, Shannon had received something even greater. And as proof of that, a single tear with the same sparkle as a diamond dripped down. Wow. George is a fucking Chad, honestly. You have to respect his determination. Like, he was definitely going to betray the family in a way, you know? Or I guess you could see it as he was going to betray his mother. I'm sure Hideyoshi would come around, maybe. He seems pretty open-minded eventually, maybe. I don't know. They probably would have both, you know, have scolded him, especially, or been very upset after everything that they have done to raise such a nice young man such as George. But George is old enough to make these crazy decisions by himself and settle with them.
それはなんともふるった答えだことね。なるほど。よく考えたら君にこれは気楽な選択肢だわ。だって君の両親は第一の晩にすでに殺されちゃってるんだもんね。今さら君にとって死んで困る人間は誰もいない。なるほどね。これは簡単な選択だったわ。
何とでも言うがいい。これが僕の、そして僕の次期当主としての覚悟と。
The sparkle in George's eyes was brilliantly sharp. For just an instant, Gap felt the same sense of threat as Kinzo's, and was slightly overwhelmed.
なるほど。
Maybe George actually does have, like, the potential to become a successor, maybe within the same realm as Battler, and maybe even Maria, just because of how much he's willing to sacrifice in a very similar vein to Kinzo.
ゴールドスミスと同じ答え。君もあどけなさそうな顔して。将来はとんだ悪魔になるわけね。なんだ。私たちとてもうまくやれそうじゃない。君がゴールドスミスの後を継ぐ。そしてやがては私は召喚され、君に仕えることもあるかもしれない。それも案外面白いかもしれないわね。
Gap had needed to change her opinion of George. This man bore a determination and resolve unimaginable from his outward appearance, and not just now, but since the very beginning.
僕には今すぐ闘志を継承する覚悟がある。いや違うね。君はこのテストを闘志として考えろと言った。だから僕は自分が闘志であると前提して答えたんだ。いや、それすら違う。闘志そのものとして考えた。僕は今後宮家の当主なんだ。
Damn.
見事だわ。そこまで言えるなんてね。君はどうやらかなりの大物だわ。
I'll say.
バトラとマリアのテストはまだだけど、私は君が合格でいい気がする。
Well, as everybody expected, Jessica fucked up. She's dead. She also failed. Let's not forget that one. George is in good standing here. Like, he's in the running.
かけねなしの本当のものならね。
僕の覚悟を疑うというのか。
君が選んだ選択肢を実行できる？今すぐ自らの手でこの島に存在する全ての命を生贄に捧げることができる？自らの手でよ。
できるね。その覚悟はあると僕は何度も言っている。
Whoa. Quite the look that he's giving here.
ならば今すぐゲストハウスに戻り、バトラとマリアを殺しなさい。それが終わったら他の人質たちも連れてきてあげる。君の手でシャノン以外の全員をその目の前で処刑してみせるのよ。できるんでしょ？
できるね。僕の覚悟は君程度のそれとはレベルが違う。
ならば実行しなさい。全てに死を。新しき後ろ宮家の当主としてこの血塗られた儀式の遂行を。
了解したよ。実行する。僕は今やもう後ろ宮家の当主だ。
ええ、そうよ。自らの手でその玉座を赤く染めなさい。君は悪魔たちを滑る魔界の王となる。
Gap was convinced. This man truly was fitting to succeed Kinzo's madness. Wow. Is he actually gonna just go back to the guest house?
新しき魔王の誕生を祝うがいい。悪魔の島は今新しい王を迎えた。
What about Battler and Maria? In response to the demon's call, a tempest raged more and more. Then a massive lightning bolt fell, its tearing thunder and brilliant light giving the sensation of a moment of silence. Did George just win?
でさ、その殺害の順番だけど、僕が決めていいわけだよね。
どうぞご自由に。新しきロッケン島の魔王陛下、あなたの御心の赴くままに。
とりあえずさ、その一番目が君になるわけだけど、いいかな。
He turned the fucking tables. That was an open-ended question, wasn't it? Well, I guess an open-ended answer. A gust of wind blew, stirring up George's jacket as if it was a cloak. It was very much like the cloak worn by the head. It definitely carried that impression of dignity. At that time, Gap truly did see the storm wiped away, and the sky covered with a pure white and vast full moon. The man who called himself the new head bore the full moon on his back and sneered at the demon.
後宮家親族の全ての命さえも今や僕の財産だ。それに損害を出してくれた賠償、安くは済まないよ。まさか僕の両親に夏日おばさん、ルドルフおじさん、ローザおばさん、そして源氏さんの命を奪っておいて、この僕が見逃すと本気で思ってるのかい？
はは生意気よ。
George, you crazy son of a bitch. Renove was trying to press his palm against Jessica's chest and stop her heart. But right before he could, his hand stopped. What's happening? On the carpet at their feet, two small red flowers bloomed with a plop plop. The seed of those flowers was way up high, piercing into the heavens on Jessica's fist. Renove's nose was stained red with spewing blood, and those drops had been dripping onto the carpet.
ちなみに、さっきのは乙女としての回答、次期当主としての回答は別だぜ。
お伺いします。
大好きな人も、家族も、親族もみんな私が守る。私が当主なら、それは私の責務だ。お父さんは威張ってるだけじゃない。私や母さんを守ってた。後宮家を受け継ぐ重圧ってやつと何十年も戦ってた。だからわかるぜ。次期当主ってのはな、軽くねえんだよ。だからさ、捨てられるんだよ。自分の命くらい簡単にかけられちまうんだよ。
Jessica knew. She knew that in order to protect her family, her father had bluffed and fought alone continuously. Jessica understood something that his back had been telling her. Another left straight was buried into Renove's face. That terrifying strike wasn't due to just the brass knuckles that she was using. What the fuck? Where the hell did she get those? It was a strike of a person, a family head who could throw away everything in order to protect.
父さんが次期当主の資格を失ったなら、順当に次の当主は私が継承するぜ。後宮家当主、後宮ジェシカ。これ以上好きにさせるほどふぬけちゃいねえぜ。
You know, I gotta really respect where they're coming from here, but I think they're getting a little cocky.
素晴らしい回答です。先ほどの点数を改めましょう。その回答に10点プラス見事な左ストレートに10。
ってことはあと20点プラスで100点満点だな。
As Renove jumped backwards, somersaulting in midair, he violently wiped away the blood pouring from his nose. It had become not blood, but petals of a red rose. The blood on his face was wiped off, and in its place was a grin filled with delight, or with a delight that he hadn't felt in so many centuries that he couldn't remember.
ジェシカ様の覚悟、満点に値するかどうか、この炉の上、試させていただきますよ。
うぜえぜ、かかってきやがれ。
おいで、奈落へ。
Suddenly, beneath George's feet, a pitch-black pitfall opened its mouth wide. Of course, George had no way of resisting. After being swallowed up by that, George fell out of a pitch-black hole that had opened up in the ceiling of the arbor. Oh man, we got a crazy fight going on here. As George fell down, well, I guess two of them, two crazy fights. As George fell down, he was hit by a reverse roundhouse kick from a sharp stiletto. There we go, stiletto heel, like a strike from a carefully aimed bee. The instant George, after being blown out of the arbor, thought that he had been swallowed up by a rose bush, another pitch-black hole opened there and swallowed George up. And this time, a pitch-black hole opened at Gap's feet before her eyes, spitting a defenseless George out of it. At that time, Gap had already finished the preparatory, there we go, motions for the next reverse roundhouse kick. Yeah, I don't see George as much of a fighter, so he might be at a disadvantage here. Okay, thank God. Thank God. Okay, I was worried. I'm like, damn, did her ass or like anything else show there? But like, no, she's covered up. We're okay. Right side of the head, below the right armpit, side of the right knee. As Gap danced and spun like a small cyclone, she kept hitting him. Left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot with successive roundhouse kicks. The fourth one became a sweep, cutting George's feet out from under him and making him fall down. But of course, there was no floor there but a pitch black hole, and George was swallowed up once again. Gap once again spun around like a small cyclone. George was once again spat out from the ceiling of the arbor.
食らって噛み締めなさい。奈落の終点が一撃。死ね！
Wowzers. You know, I do have to say, George came in with more confidence and everything compared to Jessica, but kudos to both of them. The sharp strike of the queen bee pierced the heavens like a rising cyclone. It kicked through George's lower chest as he fell from the ceiling. And then time froze. George was pinned in midair by Gap's raised leg. Okay, so we will end it there. I know we're like in the middle of some crazy shit, but I'm out of time, really. So this is chapter 16. We have to be getting closer and closer to the end of this episode, really. But we'll keep the grind going. So thank you all for tuning in. Hope you all enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, all that fancy jazz. And it looked like this recording worked out pretty well. I noticed no hitches. I'll have to go through the video when I start editing to make sure there's no hitches there. But, you know, God bless to, you know, the AMD gods for bestowing upon me some quality hardware. Anyways, take it easy, guys.